abandoning CO2 emissions while improving living standards. Transport. The most powerful technology at hand for reducing CO2 emissions is driverless technology. Driverless technology can and eventually will allow us to rebuild the logistics of modern urban life. Firstly, I would like to model driverless systems in a new build urban village, because this is where the technology is fully competent already. In fact, the technology to support this can be bought off the shelf today. Driverless is simple and easy when the cars stick to a designated guideway. The technology is only complicated when it must negotiate existing traffic. In a new build village of say 1,000 houses and therefore about 4,000 persons, we can build for driverless operation from the very beginning as an exclusive transport system supporting the village internally. This means we can structure a new suburb in the included format. Flow on and off operation as opposed to stop-start grid-style operation. Take a look at this model. Here are the roads. They exist in a discrete one-way network. The houses, the segregated walkway, and the dominating greenery. And note that driverless systems like this function as perfect feeders for public transport or collective travel. A well-loaded shuttle bus can take you to work efficiently if you work outside the village. Using electrically based cars within the village makes for a far smoother and more energy-efficient ride, and also shorter travel times. If the operating speed is say 30 kilometers an hour, then energy consumption will be extremely low. Note, a car travelling at half the speed consumes only a quarter of the energy and requires only an eighth of the drive power in an electrical format. That is, when there's no dead weight engine drag from the internal combustion engine. The energy demands at these speeds are so low that you will find that about half the power can be accommodated by solar panels on the vehicles, especially if high-pressure tyres are used. Further, in a driverless auto taxi system, you can order up a vehicle that is only the size that you need at the time. One person travelling? This means you will only need a single-seat car. This further greatly reduces energy needs. 4. Localizing new transport demand to new build villages on the fringes of a city reduces traffic congestion, which otherwise damages transport efficiency. This is because only about 10% of transport demand runs to the CBD in a modern city. In a growing city that is not artificially intensified, most new transport demand localizes to the fringes, with working people commuting to nearby employment hubs for work. Hence, allowing cities to geographically expand bleeds off new transport demand to where it's most efficiently accommodated. Indeed, it should be no surprise that low-density cities have shorter commutes and lower congestion than high-density cities. It's also important to note that urbanisation does not problematically consume farmland. In New Zealand, for example, less than 1% of the land area is urbanised. And if done right, new urbanisation with driverless technology can promote the true garden village, where the houses are hard to see for the trees, gardens, and horticulture. Note also, the human footprint on the natural world is, and always has been, overwhelmingly a food issue, not a housing issue. We really shouldn't be too concerned with normal urban expansion. Food. If we want to turn farms into CO2 absorbing forests, then nothing will do that better than incentivizing people to come away from a high meat diet and moving closer to a vegetarian diet, which I must add is a lot healthier as well. Driverless technology can make this easy. Going vegetarian, or more so, is tough when it's impractical to do it in a way where we can be sure we're not compromising our nutrition. But with driverless technology we can, and will, produce microcars that cheaply post any meal to our homes, professionally prepared in a large, part roboticized kitchen. and kitchens that can be built for high energy efficiency by insulating ovens so that most of the thermal energy goes to the food for cooking and not so much wasted through heat loss from and within the ovens. Centralised cooking facilitated by automated delivery can and will reduce home cooking to hobby status, because the total production line, from the farm to the table, is dramatically streamlined and low cost. This gives us fresh food, reduced packaging and storage, and great economies of scale in production. All of this further reduces energy and likewise our need to burn fuel and create waste. When you can order exactly the meal you want, cheaply, and have it delivered to you anywhere fast from an app on your phone, you will see that it will be easier than ever to go vegetarian if we want. The meals will be excellent and the nutrition report can be monitored by your phone via an app. Going vegetarian will be easy. With driverless technology and microcars, we can also go back to the old milk bottles type system and use toughened glass and stainless steel containments that are reused over and again instead of wasteful packaging. The containments can be efficiently and automatically cleaned with hot water jets as opposed to chemical cleaners by using digital cameras to check explicitly for proper cleanliness, removing the risk of harmful bacteria. Housing structure. Building up is not as simple as placing one box on top of another. The box underneath must also then take the load of the box on top. The higher you go, the more exaggerated the effect becomes. This is why high-rises are expensive to build and consume large amounts of concrete and steel per floor just to support their own weight. And of course, this is why apartments tend to be small. The per square foot floor area is very expensive. This effect is further exaggerated in countries like New Zealand, where the earthquake risk demands even greater structural investment in high-rise structures. High-rises are also more expensive in terms of ongoing energy requirements, with the need for elevators and comprehensive lighting around and within the building. To keep housing energy efficient, it makes sense for New Zealand to invest mainly in lower density housing. It's a lot cheaper structurally, and detached housing is the natural preference of around 85% of the market, according to a number of studies. Also, a high-rise structure cannot be built to be as strong as a low-rise structure in an earthquake event, because the structural demands are simply too extreme to make high-rises equally safe. Building up will always be more dangerous in New Zealand. 2. The most efficient housing structure would be a 2-storey wood, steel or aluminium home built like a townhouse and part sunk into the earth, about 5 feet down, to ensure that no one in the new development has neighbours looking onto their backyard. The structural costs are not much of a concern for this kind of housing, and the footprint on the land is small. Indeed, there's no reason why a narrow house cannot affordably employ a rooftop garden to make its ecological footprint invisible. Note, a small house does not have wide spans for the roof, which makes it easier to build for load bearing and therefore a rooftop garden if people choose this. 3. How large does a home need to be? In a lower density garden development, the outside can become a comprehensive part of your home in terms of feeling. So long as your home is well windowed, with windows that create wraparound views in the living room especially, you will never feel claustrophobic. A well-built small home can feel better than many big homes, of which so often have worthless duplicate rooms and huge wasted space, through poorly visualized design. The key to making a smaller home work and feel good is to basically design it so that residents are not tripping up over each other in the house. Make it so that internal operations are well segregated and acoustically insulated from each other where this is important. Also, if the house is very small, plenty of open shelving goes a long way for ease of tidiness. Turning halls into co-functioning open storage areas can work very well, for example. None of this is difficult. We can shrink our houses with intelligent design. Also note, clever design is much easier now with virtual reality simulators, allowing us to know what a house feels like, and not just how it looks, when buying it off a plan. Home energy efficiency. Building for energy efficiency in a new home is not difficult. First, I will point out that air is an extremely good insulator. That is, if we can stop it from moving. This is because air is about 800 times less dense than water. It's almost a vacuum. The trick is, of course, to stop air from moving as much as we practically can, or as much as practically possible, and nothing is better than that than styrofoam. Put your hand on a piece of styrofoam and watch how quickly your hand heats up because your body heat can't escape. You will see what I mean. Hence, if our new builds embrace styrofoam panels, chemically treated for fire resistance, then we can make wall heat loss within the home almost irrelevant. The best way to do this is to place the panels internally within the rooms, over the ceiling and also the top section of the walls, down to about 3 feet. This way you will not need to heat the walls first to get rapid heating in your home. Up high, they will not be prone to damage either. The lower section should have the styrofoam on the other side of the gypboard. The really big concern for heat loss is windows. They work like convection coolers. Put your hand on a window on a cold day and you will know what you're fighting against. Double glazing is the answer, or if this is too expensive for some people, they can employ blinds that seal an air gap around the window. Using acrylic, see-through plastic, for the internal window of a double glazed window can be a good option too. Acrylic is cheap and safe for children, a superior insulator to glass, and scratches and hazing over time can be economically removed. Further to this, we can build houses with heat exchangers integrated with the ventilation system. This way, warm air going out heats the cool air coming in for free, which will impact energy efficiency significantly, giving us the warm, mold-free home that isn't stuffy. From here, you could very well build a home with a thermal energy demand of about maybe 10% of a common home today. A small heat pump can master cooling and heating at a truly benign energy cost with a well-insulated foundation. Note that heat pumps can be 2 to 5 times more energy efficient than other forms of heating because they mostly transfer energy from the outside to the inside rather than just adding energy via a crude heating mechanism. That is why they're so popular. Indeed, you will find the insulation in my model to be so good that you would need to be careful in summer to be sure that your home doesn't work like a solar cooker. Keep the windows open. 2. Hot water. Drastically reducing the energy consumption of showering can be done by turning your shower on for rinsing and drenching only. Turn a 10-minute shower into a 30-second shower in terms of water use. That's what you're effectively doing. However, for this to be comfortable, the water temperature will need to be electronically controlled. You set the temperature with a controller, and the shower gives you the green light when the ideal temperature is reached. The system will also need to employ a fan heater in the shower containment, otherwise you'll get cold from evaporation when you turn the hot water off. However, this should not be expensive at all. This idea is good for large families as it can drastically attack their power bill and reduce water consumption, of course. There are further options like using heat exchangers so the water going out warms the water going in, and using shower heads that aerate the water so as to reduce actual, though not apparent, water flow. All depends, you can go as crazy as you want with any of this sort of stuff. 3. Cooking and washing. As expressed earlier, Reducing cooking energy consumption can be best championed by centralised kitchens within a community. But there are common sense things we can do as well, like encouraging people to use one-person-only water boilers for their coffee, and pressure cookers, and slow cookers, microwaves, etc. That is, anything that defends against the energy loss from evaporation and excessive containment mass, basically. Washing. Washing can also be done more efficiently if it's outsourced to a laundromat. Again, this is easily done with driverless systems. We can build washing machines with low water and low energy consumption using advanced technologies. If these more expensive machines are working all day, they will quickly pay for themselves. Building infrastructure for recreation and other. 1. In a new build development with driverless technology, we have the option of giving people 2-minute access to a private swimming pool, tennis court, gym, or whatever. They can have the convenience of immediate access to facilities without the expense of having these things in their personal property. And note, driverless systems will give you foyer-to-foyer transport. Absolutely effortless. So the entire community really does become a direct extension of the home. That opens so many possibilities. Okay, this obviously removes a lot of waste and energy loss, and otherwise building so many facilities that are otherwise only occasionally used. And who wants to maintain all those facilities? Absolute pain in the neck. Far better to just, one tennis court per 20 or 30 people. Okay, continuing. Indeed, it can also support a sharing economy. Rather than purchasing products only occasionally used, you can have a driverless car post you any odd item in 5 minutes, allowing you to more hire than buy things. You can have a community wardrobe, if you like, similar to a public library, but for much more than just books. Convenience is key. It's the driverless cars with the internet give us the convenience revolution, so to speak, which makes it so easy and practical for people to hire things. Okay, 2, roading. In a driverless village, you will not need to own a car, or if you do own a car, it should be stored on the immediate outside of the development. This way, we eliminate the need for wide internal roads. In fact, the roads are reduced to footpath size, and there will be no need for garages. Needless to say, there are substantial cost and energy savings in doing this, and we reduce the human footprint on the natural world with such discrete roading. As I've expressed before, it gives us the true garden village. No car noise, natural sounds, and remarkably green and beautiful. 3. Working. Building commercial infrastructure is unavoidable, of course, inside or outside a garden village. But by employing ultra-fast broadband and 5G internet, we can make telecommuting more attractive. Working at home should be encouraged as it eliminates the need for commuting altogether and office infrastructure. Note that robotics technology has come a long way now. Working from home can be effective even for manual operations, as people will soon be able to remote control all kinds of machinery using no latency 5G technology soon to be implemented. And if we're thinking about reducing carbon emissions and all that sort of thing, then we need to get real about where we know technology is going and start basing our plans on that reality. So we need to bring attention to all this stuff. Okay, 4. Schools. There are 2 reasons why we can second guess the need to build new schools. One is that research on identical twin studies over many decades has shown that what counts for the long-term academic performance of a child is not, would you believe, education, but genes and child abuse. Schools only seem to count in the short term. By the time children are about 16 years old, academic performance differences almost completely iron out. The other reason is that education is so easily accessible to anyone now, online, that we hardly need to institutionalize it anymore. Learning can organically evolve with the student anywhere and any time. We really are due a serious rethink about how this whole education game works. It pays to appreciate that the only reason why we did things the way that we did in the past is because we never had the tools to do it any differently. Times have changed radically. We really are, as I said, due for a rethink. Continuing. Hence, in a new garden village especially, we can consider letting education devolve into homeschooling clubs, and recreational opportunities for children that allow them to broadly socialise and discover interests and basically have good fun. To this end, a garden village can become an entire school in itself for young children, especially if the village is socially controlled to the end of keeping pedophiles and the like well isolated from kids. You can lay a very safe foundation, and if you lay a very safe foundation for kids, then, it's great for their freedom. Okay. Needless to say, moving in this direction could save a lot of money and expense and make life much easier for parents as well. It's incredible how much parents' lives revolve around the need to send their kids to school. With driverless technology, transporting children to any given local facility will be a moot concern. Again, giving children and parents a lot more freedom. Okay, coming away from the images, I'm just going to do a talk here. Furthermore, just a very general expression on reducing carbon emissions and what all this means. If we're serious about cutting back on CO2 emissions, then we need to find ways of working with human demand, not against it. That is, if we want real success. If you try to shame people out of their comfortable lifestyles or even politically force them out of them, then they will progressively boycott your country and go to some other place that will accommodate their needs. That's the hard truth. That's human nature. Hence, it is far, far more effective to innovate. And indeed, as I have shown, we have the tools to give people an even better lifestyle, yet with much less CO2 consumption, more affordably, and even while greening the earth to the end of it. This is a recipe for rapid eco-living uptake. Being good on costs is terribly important. We know that richer countries, richer people, care about the environment more, and that's just because they can personally afford to. A starving man does not have the surplus to care about more than surviving for tomorrow. Hence, making people richer is one of the best things we can do for the environment. And this is what my suggestions do, as they deliver higher living standards at lower costs. The idea of moving into low-density garden suburbs using modern technologies means we can abandon artificial geographical growth constraints on cities. Artificial boundaries have had the direct effect of radically amplifying land costs, which has certainly made people poorer. A raw section for a new home on the city fringe should cost about $20,000, not $400,000 like it does today. My suggestions also attack the need to burn carbon on the most basic level. They reduce the very need to consume in the first place for a given living standard achieved. This is so important. Reducing carbon consumption needs to work on the consumer end, and not so much on the producer end, because if you attack carbon production, then your dirty work will only be outsourced to countries where the dirty work is done even dirtier. So shutting down oil and gas exploration in New Zealand is not an answer, or certainly not an answer on the local or national level. Focusing on consumer and consumption is the answer. And that is the policy example that New Zealand can make for the world. From here, with such an efficient foundation, reducing CO2 emissions can be fully mitigated with tree planting, which we can do world over. And I'll just make an important note here. Of course, planting a tree in the middle of Africa is just as good as planting one in New Zealand. It's one global atmosphere. It has the exact same effect. Though in Africa you can plant 10 for the same money because the labour and land is so cheap over there. So it's probably the better idea. And if we want to reduce carbon emissions, we really do need to think on a global macro scale level and think what is the best policy from that position. Because again, it's one atmosphere. Okay, we can even pay to irrigate the deserts, maybe. If we're rich and efficient, we can then comfortably afford to do these kinds of things. We can help the then expanding forests reabsorb what humanity has put out. Also, to drive innovation further, we can employ a carbon consumption tax, incrementally and with clear warning, which will steadily accelerate the use of innovation. Making costs predictable is very important, so that producers and consumers can make plans for a world where carbon will be predictably expensive. The truth is, if carbon consumption was intelligently taxed, initiatives like what I have suggested would happen all on their own, government regulations permitting. Introduce rational taxation and regulatory freedom, that is appropriate regulatory freedom, and the innovators will take care of the rest. And they will do it incomparably better than a state bureaucracy trying to pick winners. Believe you me, we know that from history. As for regulation, make no mistake, liberating urban land supply, as I have already shown, will be absolutely vital to let the most effective innovation breathe. We don't need population control to save the planet, or surely not just yet. We just need to focus on reducing waste at appropriate scales using modern technologies. We have the tools, and none of my common sense suggestions are beyond us. They cost less, not more. And again, we're asking no one to do anything that will truly compromise their lifestyle. So how good is that? From here, we can master environmentalism by simply closing the resource circuit on food, by turning human waste into fertilizer. And I must stress again that promoting and facilitating vegetarianism is one of the very best things we can do, as it liberates vast farmland to be converted back to forest. And forests, of course, are the best carbon sinks. And further to positive environmentalism, if we simply make sure that we seal the landfills properly, like they do in California, and then cover the landfills with trees when we're finished with them, again like they do in California, and do mining and producing in a manner that near eliminates environmental fallout, we can be satisfied that we have cleaned up our act. Again, all of my suggestions are affordable and will be progressively more affordable in the future, because with technology the only way is up. And indeed, in wealthier countries these kinds of initiatives are already being done today. Finally, there is the issue with the developing world that is rapidly developing. What can I say? The sooner we create good examples of efficient development before the developing world repeats our mistakes, the better. Thank you.